Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Wellness Through Reading. I am your host, Tanisha. I like to consider myself your BFF of literature that guides you to keep reading a daily habit as a form of self-care. So friends, I have a question for you. In the 21st century, why are we still looking backwards when it comes to dating and courtship rules? How have books like Julia Quinn Bridgeton series added to this recurring popularity of courtship versus just modern day dating? Well, all that and more will be discussed in today's episode of the book review of Julia Quinn's The Duke and I. But also we'll be doing an overall analysis about how old-fashioned courtship has made a comeback in 2023. So what makes the Regency era so interesting? I mean, it's only lasted for less than a decade, and yet centuries later we are still captivated by all the elegant gowns, the elaborate balls, and the rules of courtship. Such as having to have a chaperone in the company of men and women, all that stuff. So for me, I will say that the awareness of Julia Quinn's book series peaked with the Netflix series Bridgerton. The first season debuted on Christmas Day 2020. At a time when the whole world was in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, the death toll increased daily, people were stuck in their houses, and some had lost their jobs, some lost their homes. It was just a refreshing break to take time and watch a show that had warmth, lighthearted conversation, diversity, and above all else, love. And a happy ending as well, too. But according to Netflix, well over 63 million households watched the series. That was a huge debut and the biggest at its time. The romance genre by far is the most lucrative, and what the Bridgerton series represents is a subgenre of it, which is the Regency era romance novel. So how did an entire subgenre of literature spring up around a few thousand rich people who lived during the 1810s? For the origins of the modern Regency romance, we have to look back at works of George Hewer. Starting in 1935, Hewer wrote over 24 meticulously researched historical books, all set in the Jane Austen era, with the obsessive focus on London's tiny upper class, and upstairs-downstairs type of conversations. According to literary scholar Diana Wallace, it was incredibly popular of Hewer's historical novels that helped transfer historical fiction into a more feminine space that continued to centralize female subjectivity, desires, and apprehensions to an unusual extent. Regency set historical romances can range from frothy comedy to suspense to just hardcore erotica. And in all of these stories, a period strange cultural moment is a vital backdrop for the romantic plot. From the strict hierarchies to the careful etiquette to the gowns, there's plenty about the romance period to keep readers always wanting more. And I was one of them, definitely. And I don't know about you, but I was definitely into the TV series so much. And then when I found out that it was a book, I immediately went and got the entire series. So I first read The Duke and I by Julia Quinn, which was originally published in the early 2000s. It starts off with more background of the rake of a duke, Simon Bassett, the Duke of Hastings. The opening chapter details the Duke's inner thoughts about his mother dying, bringing him into the world, and the guilt that he carried because he was not perfect. His father, the present Duke of Hastings, was no help to be a constructive parent. The Duke Sr. was harsh, mean, and just flat-out cruel. Just like in the TV series, Simon had an incredibly bad stutter as a young child that caused his father to view him as damaged goods. It was under the tutelage of Lady Dansbury that he was able to overcome his stutter, although unlike the TV series, in moments of pure emotion, he still has a stutter, so it never went away, but in the TV series it showed that it did, but it doesn't. He's described as dark, brooding, but wise and handsome, the type of gentleman that everyone wants to have conversation with, and everyone wants to be with. He is the epitome of dukeness, if you will. Then enters Daphne Bridgerton. In the book, she is actually a few seasons into courtship, and has not had any luck finding a match. She believes that she is just too nice and unaggressive like her counterparts to find a match. So the Duke and Daphne meet at the start of the social season. Simon is coerced to go to a ball due to an obligation with a friend. He is immediately swarmed by all the ladies of the court, and he is astonished at how they all seem to know his name. He later runs into an old school friend named Anthony Bridgerton, who tells him about Lady Whistledown, the mysterious writer of the gossip social papers that gives details on all the gossip throughout the ton. Lady Whistledown and Bridgerton is essentially the gossip girl of the Regency era. She knows everybody's business and is not afraid to spill it all. In the historical context of this, there is no significant evidence that entire publications were being dedicated to gossip, But there are sections of newspapers dedicated to entailing the antics of the upper class, and even unflattering cartoons about them were made. But so that part of it is pretty accurate. So going back to the ball, Simon is intrigued by Daphne at first when he does not see her among the young ladies that are flaunting themselves at him. In fact, at one point he does get away from all the scene and finds Daphne trying to turn down the advances of a bumbling Baron Burbrook. The Baron makes an unwanted advance towards her, and just as Simon is going to step in to help her, she punches him, knocking him flat out. Simon comes around the corner, very impressed. Daphne utterly humiliated and just all the way freaking out, because if anyone finds out she was alone with him, she would be ruined for life. Ruined meaning that her reputation would be down, she'd be listed, scarlet letter, all that stuff. So, not good. So, they quickly hide him in a nearby closet and then return to the dance floor. Daphne is then captured by her mother, who continues to throw her in the direction of some of the most eligible bachelors at the party. Simon, wanting to spend more time with her, asks if he would like to dance with her. During this dance is when Simon concocts a plan to help Daphne get a husband. He devises a ruse that he and Daphne should pretend to be courting in order for her to gain the favor of more potential partners. Like Daphne, I was a little confused at that. How does courting one man give rise to more men wanting her? Wouldn't that mean that she was taken because they were going together? But Simon states that's not true. Men are like sheep. Where one goes, the rest will soon follow. Nothing is more desirable to a man than pursuing a woman who is desired by society's top men, like a duke. Is that true? What are your thoughts on that? Comment in the review section on what your thoughts on that are. But despite how I think about this, Daphne actually agrees, and as soon as the next day, she is lavished with flowers from potential suitors. Simon also shows up at her home, and surprising to him, he gets extremely angry at the sight of all these suitors courting her. He reminds himself that he must maintain a cool head because he made it clear that he never wanted to have a family. His dislike for his father due to his father's poor treatment of him as a young child was so intense that on his father's deathbed he made it clear that he would never sire an heir, therefore allowing for the Bassett family line to come to a complete end. So, because of that, he could never marry Daphne, because Daphne, more than anything, wants to be a mother and a wife and mother. But seeing her in that sea full of suitors, it still hurt him. But at this moment is when Daphne's overprotective big brother comes in between them and says, what game are they playing? I gotta say, I like the character of Anthony Bridgeton more in the books than I do in the TV series. Because in the book, he is a loving, caring big brother who just wants the best for Daphne. But in the TV series, he's just very rude and off-putting. Case in point, the whole Baron Burbrook situation in the in the book series, Anthony makes it very clear from the get-go, you will never marry my sister, so leave her alone. But in the TV series, he's very willingly allows Daphne to be somewhat engaged to Burbrook out of a whim. Doesn't hear a word she has to say about the situation. So I didn't care for much in the TV series. So Daphne does tell her brother, but in the book series, what makes it different than the TV is that in the book, Daphne actually does tell her brother about the ruse between her and the Duke. And therefore, he doesn't still like it, but he understands. Meaning, yeah. So the ruse is going pretty well. She's gaining the attention of all the men in society, except for the one that she really wants, which is Simon. As they're going along courting and whatnot and bringing all the students, it's very clear that Daphne and Simon have feelings for each other. At one point, things get so heated very quickly that they end up walking away to a garden area by themselves where they end up making out. So yeah, it gets heated fairly quickly. And mind you, we're only halfway into the novel at this point. Before we continue, a word from today's sponsor. It's that time of the month. Aunt Flo is in town. Y'all know what I mean, especially the ladies of the podcast. These are all the euphemisms that we use to state that your period is on its way. I am a woman who used to suffer from extremely painful periods that kept me up at night, kept me in bed so I couldn't go to work. That was all changed, and when I found some main supplements. Our bodies fluctuate from day to day, week to week, month to month, so we need natural supplements that help support these hormones. And the supplements that they offer are the Daily Hormone Balance, which provides more energy, better moods, reduced cravings. Key ingredients include grapeseed extract, passion flower, B vitamin complex, magnesium, and zinc. There is also the PMS period support, which you use before your period to avoid bloating, have reduced cramping, and fewer mood swings. Key ingredients include green tea and vitamin D. There's also the urinary tract cleanse and protects your urinary system. Key ingredients are your cranberry juice extract, and then there's also the prebiotic for women for better gut health, soothes the intestines, and reduces bloating. And lastly, there's the menopause essentials, which helps to have fewer hot flashes, better sleep, and more stable moods. Me personally, I use the daily supplement and the PMS period supplement. And I must say, for the first time in my life since starting my period at the age of 15, both these supplements have helped reduce my pain ridiculously. I no longer get those stabbing pains anymore. So obviously I use the daily supplement on a daily basis, and then 2 to 3 days before my period is set to start, I use the PMS support to help with those uncomfortable mood swings and cravings that we all get during that time. I owe all of this wonderfulness to Semaine. So for more information about it, or to order your first bottle, go to semainehealth.com. That is SEMAINE to get 20% off your first bottle. Periods are normal. The pain should not be. I thank you so much for listening. Now let's get back into the episode. Okay, where were we? Oh yes, Simon and Daphne have a ruse, but then they start to fall in love. Then they find out making out in their garden, and of course, at this exact moment, her brother, her very overprotective brother, would just happen to walk past and see them. Awkward. And after Anthony punches Simon in the face, it is agreed that to avoid scandal that Daphne and Simon would marry immediately. So now we fast forward to an incredibly awkward wedding night. Daphne tells Simon that she knows why Simon doesn't want to have children. Her brother told her the truth, and it is because she thinks he is impotent. Simon is flabbergasted at this notion and clearly yells that no, that's not the reason. Simon then realizes that Daphne has no idea what occurs between a man and a woman on their wedding night. Daphne admits that she does not, and Simon begins laughing at her, which makes his disgruntled wife pout. Was Daphne's naivete about sex an interesting plot twist, or in real life scenario at the 1810s, would she really have been that clueless? It is true that the higher ranking women of society would be more innocent, would be more ignorant of these type of situations of sex, period, let's just say it. The more people would have shielded her from the immoral talk, such as penetrative sex and intimacy. And that is because the innocence of a woman is considered to be more desirable for the marriage market. Again, for women, everything about them was marriage material, particularly for the upper class. However, for Daphne to be sent on her honeymoon with zero knowledge of what to expect is kind of highly unlikely. Being after the engagement, a typical courtship rules with that her mother or some higher-ranking woman or her maid, or at least, would have filled her in on all the extra details that she would have needed to know. I mean, goodness, send the poor girl out there, send a sailor to sea with no biscuit. Anywho, so Simon and Daphne spend a romantic honeymoon in some very spicy situations. So I gotta give this one a 5 out of 5 star for spiciness. However, despite knowing about at least the basic principles of sex, Simon has been using the pull-out method in order to not get Daphne pregnant. So she's not familiar with that part of it. Deceitful, yes indeed. Wasn't until the Hastings housekeeper told her all the intimate details that goes into getting actually pregnant that she realized that Simon's been lying to her. Daphne confronts Simon and they argue. So, okay, well, I agree. What Simon did was wrong, but what Daphne does in realization was even double wrong. One night, Simon comes home drunk, and they end up in an intimate act, and she kind of forces herself on him, and I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, but read the book, just read the book and you'll understand. So here's the thing. This is where I think that the whole scene is very uncomfortable, because if it was the opposite and it was Simon forcing himself on Daphne, what kind of conversation would we be having? This is also shown in the TV series as well, and I'm glad that that conversation comes up, that consent is super important for both man and for woman. Yeah, so this scene is incredibly uncomfortable. Eventually, consent. Making sure that both parties in a sexual situation are comfortable with what is happening. I get it. Daphne wants to be a mother, but forcing herself on her husband when he is in a vulnerable place, not cool, not okay. But also, what Simon did was also wrong as well, too. Not informing his wife of all the reasons why. No, he didn't completely lie, but it was still a lie of omission. You didn't tell her the whole truth. So, they're going into this marriage with neither party really being honest with the other one. So, there are no innocent parties here, essentially. I will say, though, that's where I think the TV series gets it right, whereas in the book kind of stops right there. Because in the TV series, though, it does go on. You do get some accountability, both on Daphne and Simon's part, saying what they both did to each other was wrong, but also Daphne confronts her mother about not giving her the true realities of married life. A common custom regarding love and marriage was that women are to be fed the fairy tale story of marriage, and how the couple end up happily ever after they say I do and all that. But however, fairy tale love only exists in fairy tales. It's not real life. And Daphne was right to correct her mother, not preparing her for the realities of marriage. That is sex. That is how to get over hardship, how to resolve conflict. All those are super important. To be fair, though, the mother does redeem herself. Later on in the TV series, the mother and Daphne have a conversation, and the mother tells Daphne, look, your father and I, when we had a wonderful love together, we made a choice to love each other each day. And that choice can always be a little bit hard, because you're going to argue, you're going to fight, but you must choose to always love each other. And that's an important message that I wanted to get across too. So that's the type of wisdom that a girl needs in this world, not the fairy tale type of stuff. In the end, Simon and Daphne do end up having a child together, and then they go off to live happily ever after. Their own, a more realistic version of happily ever after. Let's say that. Overall, I give this one a 4 out of 5 star read. I love the characters' witty banter. I only give it 4 stars because of the non-consensual love scene, which is, again, not okay. But I do, however, okay, pause. Please don't judge me, book community. I know we must always put the book above the movie or the TV show, but in this case, I actually like the TV show more than I like the book. Please don't hurt me, but I had to say it. I just think the TV series delved more into the very essential themes, whereas in the book, while it was sweet and beautiful and everything, it kind of gave a more homey type of feel to it. It's kind of trite at times. But then again, there would be no TV series born for the book, so I'm not saying that the book is bad. I'm just saying the TV series took it to another level. So yeah, it did stay true to the spirit of the book, but I like the TV series better. I know, cardinal sin of reading. I just felt like the show offered more context, deeper analysis into the character's personality than the book did. Also, the level of diversity that was in the TV series, just bravo. And I can't wait for season 3 to come out. Ooh, can't wait. As always, I don't like to reveal everything from the book in my book reviews, because I do want you to go and get the book for yourself, analysis for yourself, and to think about it further too. So, as always, I'd like to end all of my podcast episodes with a quote of the day. And this quote comes from our author, Julia Quinn. And when talking about her book, The Duke and I, she says, "To this day, The Duke and I remain particularly close to my heart. It was the novel that made my writing take a huge leap forward." With that, I thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Wellness Through Reading. Like what you heard, leave a comment on whatever platform you're listening to the podcast, which is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Subscribe to the channel, that way so you stay notified when a new podcast episode is uploaded. Until next week, I wish you all good wellness and good reading.